mannequin? How did a mannequin end up here? On an early morning walk far down the beach shore, Thomas made an unusual discovery. As he pulled the mannequin out of the sand, he noticed some other junk nearby. What seemed to be a toy doll, just a few steps away. Thomas dropped the hand and picked up the doll. It looked like it was in good shape. Thomas instantly thought of taking it back with him to the shop. He could fix up the scratches and flaws and sell this thing at a decent price. Thomas owned a thrift shop where he sold a variety of secondhand things he repaired himself. Oftentimes, he ended up finding rare pieces like this doll or this mannequin. Thomas took a second look at the mannequin. He would easily be able to carry this doll back home in his hands, but carrying the mannequin would be a little tough. Thomas planned to drive his car back to the beach after work and take the mannequin back in his trunk. Thomas hurried back home. He ate breakfast and finished up on his usual morning routine. Right before he headed out the door, he dropped the doll into a bag and left for work. Where he fixed up damaged goods and tinkered on the merchandise. Thomas dropped the doll into a cardboard box with some other items. He still had to clean and repair before organizing them onto the shelves. The day went by as usual, and once customers started coming in, Thomas ended up getting quite busy until it was closing time. He locked up the shop and got headed home, putting off all of the work for the next day. He drove his car to the beach and walked down the shore in search of the mannequin. It had been about half an hour since he had been searching the sandy beach. The mannequin was nowhere to be seen. Thomas regretted not taking it back with him in the morning. Someone else must have found it. Finders keepers, losers weepers. Thomas went back home empty-handed. The next morning, when Thomas got to the shop, he decided to work on the new items first. He went to the box and picked up the doll, examined it for any tears. The doll was pale and had short blonde curls. It wore a floral frock and had little dress shoes on its feet. It was like any other child's toy Thomas had seen before. But this one was exceptional due to how well the eyes were designed. The doll's eyes were beautiful and almost lifelike. Thomas combed out the doll's hair and removed the stains on its dress. He replaced a small strip of Velcro on the straps of its shoes and polished its outer body and face. The doll was practically brand new again. It took a few hours, but by the afternoon, everything was shiny, nice, and good to go. Thomas temporarily put the things back in the box on the counter. He sat the doll nicely on top of the box and admired it. He was good at his job. Over the next few days, the doll stayed seated on the box on his counter. Thomas often took a glance at it, but he didn't like staring at the eyes for too long. It gave him the creeps. Thomas was a man in his mid-30s. There was nothing that could actually creep him out to that extent, but dolls with unblinking eyes was just something that nobody could get used to. One morning, when Thomas was working on an old watch in his workshop, he was startled to hear a voice in the shop so early. He thought he heard a little girl laughing. Thomas put down his glasses up to greet the customer. But when Thomas turned around, the shop was absolutely empty. Thomas furrowed his brows as he stepped out from behind the counter and went to the door. Not only was the store empty, but so was the street outside. Thomas returned inside. He was about to get back to work when he noticed the doll wasn't where he had placed it. Thomas froze for a moment. Where could it go? It was when he rolled around his chair that he found the doll sitting there. Thomas stumbled back. Had he put the doll there? Thomas hadn't touched it in the past days. How did it get there? He picked up the doll, confused, and placed it back on top of the box. That was the first of the strange occurrences he experienced. Thomas noticed there was something odd going on in his shop, and somehow he always related them to the doll. He kept hearing the laughter of a little girl when he was sure there was no one else in the shop except him. Sometimes he found the doll off the counter, on the floor, or somewhere he hadn't placed it. The first few times were ignorable, but when this continued, Thomas started to freak out just a little and decided it was time he packed the doll back inside the box. Before leaving the shop that day, Thomas made sure he placed it in the box and wrote himself a little note reminding him he placed it there. But the next morning, when he returned, he was devastated to see the doll sitting on his counter again. Thomas widened his eyes. He rushed to pick up the doll. His hands trembled. Was there some intruder playing a prank on him? Or was there something unusual about this doll? Thomas flipped the doll this way and that way, trying to locate any sort of tag or label he overlooked before. He couldn't find anything that indicated who it may have belonged to or where it was made. As he pondered on his thoughts, he heard the bell jingle by the front door as a customer walked inside. He turned around and saw a beautiful young woman. She wore a hat on her head, shading much of her face. Her sundress waved around her ankles. Thomas watched her from behind the counters as she looked through the merchandise. The young woman gasped when her eyes caught sight of the doll. She took it off the counter and brought it to Thomas. Thomas was impressed by the young woman's beautiful green eyes. He had never seen eyes so deeply colored, like shining emeralds. The young woman snapped her fingers and waved at him. "Mister, how much is this doll?" Thomas furrowed his brows as he looked at the doll. "This doll? I'm not so sure if you would want to buy it. It has some defects." "That's no problem. I collect dolls and I know one when I see it. This looks like a rare piece." "Miss, you see, I wasn't looking forward to selling it." Thomas felt a little creeped out about the doll himself. He wasn't sure whether he should let someone else buy the strange doll and experience the same. "How about I give you double the price? I request you, please." Thomas was reluctant at first, but when the young woman insisted, Thomas agreed and sold her the doll. She thanked him and happily left the shop with the doll in her hands. Evelyn Jameson was a young woman in her 20s. She recently graduated from college and lived by herself in her family home in Cape May. Evelyn had a fascination with designer dolls. Over the years, she made a collection of her own. When Evelyn saw the doll at the thrift shop, she was amazed by the gorgeous life-like eyes it had. She brought it home and decorated it on her shelf in her bedroom, along with all the other dolls she had collected. That night, at around 10, Evelyn went to bed. She turned on her bedside lamp and read a book, trying to go to sleep. Within a while, Evelyn started to get drowsy. She put aside her book and turned off the lamp. Just as she was snuggling into her blankets, Evelyn noticed something glowing in her room. She turned to face her doll shelf in the darkness. She realized the specialty of the doll she had bought at the thrift shop. Its eyes glowed in the dark. It was amazing. Evelyn stared at the doll's glowing eyes for some time. Her eyes started to burn from sleep, but at the same time, she couldn't fall asleep. The glowing eyes across the room made her feel a little uncomfortable. It almost felt like it was staring directly at her. Evelyn got out of bed and took down the doll. She left it on her cupboard in the living room and went back to bed, and soon fell asleep. In the middle of the night, however, Evelyn suddenly woke up to a noise. She tossed in her bed, irritated by the creaking floorboards. Suddenly, Evelyn felt a tug on her blanket. She squinted her eyes open and jumped up. When she noticed those same glowing eyes approaching her, the room was silent. Evelyn, terrified, patted the nightstand, searching for the switch to the lamp. just when she turned it on. She froze to a sound. The sound of a little girl giggling behind her. The next morning, police arrived at the Jameson residence. The neighbors had called when no one had answered the door. They said it sounded like a mayhem in the house the previous night. Police had to break down the door and enter the property. The house seemed untouched. Everything was in its place. But the police were stunned to find Evelyn Jameson on the floor of her bedroom. They were horrified by her condition. They had never seen anything like this before. "Officer, what do you think happened here? This woman looks like she has paper cuts all over her face and body. Who could have attacked her like this? The scratches are so small." The more intriguing question is, where are her eyes? Can't seem to get my head around this one, officer. Evelyn Jameson was laying lifeless on the floor. It seemed she had been strangled by her bedsheets. There were numerous small scratches all over her, and her beautiful green eyes were gone. Thomas was on his way to the shop the next morning, but today, he felt a little relieved not having to look at the creepy doll. First thing when he opened the shop. Just as Thomas reached near the shop, he noticed a box had been left for him. There wasn't any label on the box. He opened it up and was shocked to find the same creepy doll he had sold yesterday. Thomas picked it up. Why would the woman return the doll? She paid so much for it. As he unlocked the door and took the doll inside, placed it back on the counter just like before, Thomas looked at the doll's eyes. It was true. They were beautiful and lifelike. That's what made it special. But there was something about the doll Thomas couldn't put his finger on. He stared intently into his eyes. Had they always been so green?
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends and family.